On September 23, 1966, the Stones released their single Have You Seen Your Mother Baby Standing in the Shadow. It was released simultaneously in the UK and the US. The release of the single also coincided with the start of their UK tour with Ike and Tina Turner and the Yardbirds. Keith Oldham wrote about the single for New Musical Express and spoke to Mick and Keith about its cover and the recording of the song. Keith Richards said, "The photograph was just a laugh. There's no deeper interpretation to be placed on it. A photographer in New York took the picture as a giggle. We adopted the names Molly and Sarah for fun. We are Molly Richards, Sarah Jagger, Flossie Jones, Penelope Wyman and Millicent Watts." When asked about the song, Keith said, "We tried trombones, saxes and nearly all permutations of brass before arriving at the trumpets. Everything but the trumpets dragged." Journalist Keith Oldham also asked about Brian Jones, who had recently injured his hand. Keith Richards said, "Brian was telling me that shortly before he broke the tendons in his hand, someone had asked him if he had insured his hand. And just after that, he broke his hand while climbing. Strange, isn't it? He could play slowly with the hand while we were doing the Ed Sullivan Show. I think he'll manage the tour all right." The song was recorded at RCA Studios in Hollywood. On the October 1966 issue of Beat Instrumental, the magazine wrote about the recording session.
At the end of their recent American tour, the Stones spent 8 days in the RCA studios in Hollywood and completed about a dozen new numbers, every one of which was a Jagger-Richards composition. Like every other top outfit today, the Stones believe in constant experiment. For their August sessions, Drum City in Hollywood was raided for every available type of percussion device: Indian, Arabian and African drums, Chinese gongs, not to mention a huge selection of solid and acoustic guitars, pianos, amplifiers, organs, etc. A typical day in the studio began at 6 p.m. and continued right through the night, finally ending at 6 the following morning. Food and drink, of course, is sent in throughout the 12-hour session, but the main requirement seems to be copious supplies of cokes and beer. Once again, Andrew Oldham was in charge, with all the usual familiar faces in support. The Stones' old American mate Jack Nitcher turned up to help out on keyboard. Ian Stewart also tinkled the ivories when he wasn't replacing strings. Sound balancer Dave Hassinger was once again up in the box, twiddling the knobs. And there were, of course, the usual regular stream of famous musicians who always visit the Stones on their Hollywood recording sessions. Amongst the many who came to say hello and share a Coke were Beach Boy Brian Wilson, and the Mamas and the Puppers. The Stones obviously enjoyed their 8 days of recording, which came at the end of one of the most hectic tours they have ever undertaken. There were all the usual ups and downs, with riot scenes in Lynn, Massachusetts when tear gas was dropped right in front of them to stop a bit of rioting, but unfortunately, as the wind was blowing the wrong way, it ended up right in their faces and Brian Jones had his dulcimer pinched. So the recording sessions, hard as they were, must have seemed a bit of a rest after the actual tour.
As usual with each new Stones release at the time, the single left no one indifferent. A couple of disc magazine readers were so disgusted by the single that they sent letters to the Pop Post section of the magazine.
"Isn't it time Andrew Oldham and the Rolling Stones resigned themselves to the fact that their days as a top group are numbered? They've had a good run. It's about time they let in the younger talent like Rod Stewart, Eric Clapton and the Alan Bones set."
Why don't the Stones give up? Their latest is just a rabble of noise with snobbish lyrics. The single finally stalled at number 2. It was kept off the number 1 spot by Jim Reeves' Distant Drums, which remained at number 1 on the UK singles chart for a total of 5 weeks. On November 5th, Disc and Music Echo magazine asked, "What went wrong?" Journalist Penny Valentine spoke to some of the Stones' chart rivals and asked them why they thought the single failed to reach number 1.
The most astounding shock of the financial year ending April 1967 is that the Stones failed to reach the number 1 spot with Have You Seen Your Mother Baby Standing in the Shadow. The question now is this: is it a shake big enough to have any serious repercussions on their career? Here is the post-mortem by others in the pop world. Ronnie Lane from the Small Faces didn't think Mother was up to usual Stones standard. "Own up, Stones," said Ronnie. "This just wasn't one of your best by any means. The days are gone when an artist gets to number 1 on name alone." Of course they'll recover from a surprise like this. They're big enough and capable enough a group to override not having a number one and go on as successfully as they have done in the past. It's just one of those things. Eric Clapton agreed. Clapton said, "Really, I just didn't think this was good enough a record to reach number one. It wasn't as well constructed or as commercial as other records they've made, but I can't see this affecting them in any way at all. The Stones are big enough to cope." Spencer Davis, on the other hand, really liked the single. "I'm very surprised this record failed to reach number one," Spencer said. "I found it most exciting and well made. It deserved to be a chart topper." Georgie Fame said, "The truth is the record just wasn't good enough, but the Stones are too well established for this to affect them. If their next single is good enough, it will make number one with no trouble." Pete Staples of the Troggs is a self-confessed Stones fan. "They're definitely a top group and always will be," Pete said. "But the record was a bit of a mistake. It was mixed up and there was too much going on at once for people to accept. I regard this as just a mistake which can happen to anyone however big they are." Bobby Elliott of the Hollies said, "The record was just basically above the fans' heads. It was too hippie and those photos showing the Stones in drag put the youngsters off a bit. The Stones need slowing down. I think they've been going too fast. Their future now lies in the hands of Jagger Richards and Oldham."
On the other side of the Atlantic, American magazines were also talking about the single. A journalist from an American publication wrote about it and even asked Frank Zappa to share his views on the song. The journalist wrote,
"When they appeared in drag disguise as little old ladies for a record cover. When Charlie Watts grew a mustache. When Mick Jagger cut his hair. When they came out with an album as pretentious and musically mediocre as Aftermath. When they started singing Have You Seen Your Mother Baby Standing in the Shadow. When Brian Jones proudly posed in a Nazi uniform and stepping on a toy doll. When they dropped their electric guitars in favor of sitars and dulcimers. When they started wearing cheap mod clothes, and they only reached number 9 on the charts. Then I began to worry about what had happened to the bad boys of pop, the Rolling Stones." Then Frank Zappa, the astute and knowledgeable leader of the Mothers of Invention, told me what was happening. "Have You Seen Your Mother wasn't such a bad song," Zappa said. "It seemed to me to be the best way of saying something about a certain situation common in contemporary society. It's a pity that that was the only way the Stones could say it, but we've gone so far down that it was the only effective way. I think it was a good statement." Frank Zappa hasn't changed my mind about the song. I still think it's a piece of musical garbage, but I can see his point. The Rolling Stones have more in their heads than actually meets the eye. They are the popularizers of dissent, and I can't get no satisfaction as the national anthem of youth today.